Tonight on CBC Vancouver News. More reaction over BC trying to increase density on single-family lots.
Middle housing is not a silver bullet.
Why some cities say no way. Plus, BC becomes the first province to adopt a nurse-to-patient ratio.
Because of the shortages, they are seeing increased numbers of patients, so you could have 1 nurse to 8 patients.
What it means and whether it will lead to real change in the healthcare system. And $55 million richer.
Ooh, I knew that was coming.
The Vancouver Island man and what he's going to do with the cash.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Anita Bathe. BC's new housing plan could spell the end of single-family zoning across the province by allowing owners to add more units. Leaders in some municipalities say the move could help gently densify their neighborhoods, while others fear it could stress public infrastructure. But as John Hernandez reports, researchers say the policy is unlikely to result in a sudden large influx of housing.
Single-family homes take up the bulk of urban land in Metro Vancouver while only serving a fraction of residents. Changing that is a major pillar of BC's latest housing plan.
That's going to be quite transformational.
Called Homes for People, the plan announced on Monday will allow up to 4 units on traditional single-family lots, a move that would mark the end of single-family zoning in BC communities.
This will be province-wide policy. This means no more long zoning processes just to build a duplex, a triplex, or a row home.
The prospect has some municipal leaders excited, including in Langley City, where single-family homes take up half the land, but only house 20% of residents.
About giving people housing options, but it's not, in my mind, a sneaky way of building, apartments and townhouses in single detached areas.
The strategy has already been adopted in Victoria and is currently being considered in Vancouver. But some municipal leaders fear a provincial blanket policy is an overstep. In Richmond, concerns on the impact it could have on infrastructure.
It's fine to say you want a lot more dwelling units, but do you have the sewers and the pipes and the water supplies, everything that it takes? Every time we have a rezoning, we have a traffic study.
It's common for people to assume that as soon as zoning changes, a neighborhood will rapidly be replaced by whatever's new.
But researchers say the policy doesn't translate into a sudden jolt in density. In Oregon, a similar measure went into effect in 2021 to help fight its housing crisis, but change has been gradual.
One thing we're noticing is that it's not changing things that fast. We're talking about like a couple hundred homes in the city of Portland per year. This is a city of 600,000.
Call it one tool in a big toolbox for a housing crisis with no simple fix. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
Metro Vancouver home sales dropped in March by nearly half compared to the same month last year.
We are in the market we are in, which is a supply-constrained market that's going into a spring market with buyers who still want to buy, but there just isn't a lot of product available, and that's pushing up the prices.
That information comes from a new report by the Real Estate Board of Greater Vancouver. It finds new listings are at their lowest quantity since 2001. And when it comes to home prices, the board says they are on the rise and expected to outpace 2023 forecasts. Now, frustration is growing in Surrey tonight. Many property owners are upset with City Council now approving a 12.5% property tax hike. That's the highest average increase among all Metro Vancouver municipalities. And as our Premji explains, it's leaving them wondering how much longer they can call Surrey home.
As news spreads about the hefty tax hike, so does the frustration.
A colossal mess up.
For Ben Guman, he says he's going to feel the pinch twice, hitting his pocket as a Surrey homeowner and a business owner.
It's super concerning. We've just gotten over the COVID lockdowns and the effects that's having on businesses and homeowners.
And his concerns not his alone. Surrey community members frustrated with the back and forth over the Mounties versus Surrey police debate, which is responsible for about 1/3 of the tax hike.
feel pathetic about it. I do not even have words about it. I do not know how to put it into the words.
Surrey councillors voted to pass the city's 5-year budget Monday night, including increasing the property tax to also cover upgrades to a number of parks as well as a new ice rink. And staff estimate the average homeowner will now be paying at least $280 more.
Members of the Surrey community are waking up to more money out of our pocket where we need it the most. Go talk to your people.
And while it's not the 17.5% hike first proposed, 12.5% is cold comfort in today's economy.
Why would you make a decision in midst of inflation, in midst of when everything is getting expensive?
Seeing sentiments echoed by the councillors who voted against this spike.
This is just going to hit them way too hard in the pocketbook. And I think we need to be, as councillors, more responsible with taxpayers' money.
Anna says the city has been known to try and keep its property tax rates low in years past, but Guman fears that's what's led to what he calls a disaster now.
There's people that are making decisions about my future that aren't going to be around long enough to have to deal with it.
Surrey City Council says now the final step is for this to be adopted on Monday, April 17th. And then if you own a property or a business in Surrey, you can expect to see that 12.5% tax hike in your next bill. Zara Premji, CBC News, Surrey.
Well, BC will become the first province to set nurse-to-patient ratios. But as Mira Baines reports, there are questions over the timeline and how soon this could actually happen.
The new nurse-to-patient model proposed for BC helped seal a tentative deal between the BC Nurses Union and the province. These standards of nurse-to-patient ratios are already being used in Australia and California. It's a relief for nurses who have been leaving the profession due to burnout.
Now we will have a standard minimum, and based on that, we will know how much staff needs to be on each unit. Right now, because of the shortages, they are seeing increased numbers of patients, so you could have 1 nurse to 8 patients.
So what will it look like? Nurse-to-patient ratios are still being developed for community and long-term care. So far for hospitals, they're 1-to-1 for critical care patients, 1 nurse for every 2 mental health patients, 1-to-3 for specialized care patients, and 1-to-4 for palliative care patients. Health Minister Adrian Dix says the new nurse-to-patient model will help retain and recruit nurses.
This is the place in the world, but especially in North America, that nurses want to come and work.
Nurses across Canada have been lobbying for the change for 20 years, according to their national union. BC Liberal health critic MLA Shirley Bond questions how the model will work in rural communities that have been struggling with staffing shortages.
But with that needs to come the details, the resources, and a timeline so nurses, wherever they work in British Columbia, have a sense of hope about what the future looks like.
It's unclear exactly what will happen if those ratios aren't met.
The tentative deal still needs to be ratified, and that could happen on April 20th. The new contract also includes more mental health supports and higher wages. Mira Baines, CBC News, Victoria.
And today, BC has committed hundreds of millions of dollars in funding for school food programs. It's one of the largest investments across the country. Right now, Canada has no universal food program. And as Balpuri reports, it's lagging behind other wealthy countries.
A healthy lunch is guaranteed at this high school.
Kids that are hungry don't seem to concentrate very well, and they really need food.
In its latest budget, BC's government has pledged $214 million over 3 years to create and expand school food programs.
This is the largest investment in school food program in the province's history.
This is beef and barley today.
BC leads the provinces when it comes to funding meals in schools.
To see the province kind of like doing their part and not see the federal government doing their part is quite frustrating and disappointing.
In the last federal election, the Liberal platform included a national school food policy and $1 billion over 5 years. But last week's budget made no mention of it. Schools say they're running out of money.
We're hearing from members of our coalition across the country that they really think they will maybe have to stop serving kids earlier, like in May instead of June.
In 2019, a first-of-its-kind study looked at the funding of school food programs in Canada. It found 93% of the money comes from provincial and territorial governments.
And collectively, that was serving over 1 million kids, or about 1 in 5 in Canada.
What exists is a patchwork of programs that serve breakfast, lunch, or snacks in schools to a fraction of students. Among G7 countries, Canada is the only one without a universal school food program. And experts say the majority of countries around the world have some sort of government-funded national school meal program. In Brazil, for example, the national program there feeds 47 million students at 190,000 schools each day. Canada is a long way from anything like that, leaving school food programs struggling and many students hungry. Bel, CBC News, Vancouver.
A group of marine mammal experts are opposing the return of a captive orca to the Puget Sound. Toki the whale, also known as Lolita, was captured from the Puget Sound when she was 4 years old. For more than 5 decades, she has lived at the Miami Seaquarium, but Toki will be returned to the Salish Sea within the next 2 years. Now, a group called Truth for Toki has launched a petition to stop the relocation. It says Toki is too old and has had too many health issues to be safely moved. The group worries Toki could suffer the same fate as the orca Keiko, who starred in Free Willy. Keiko died within a year of being released and did not assimilate with other killer whales. So far, the petition has received more than 5,800 signatures. Well, it's devastating news for some student athletes at SFU. Today, the university announced it is shutting down the school's football program after more than half a century. Officials say they no longer have a place to play in the NCAA. Dan Burritt joins us live from Terry Fox Field at SFU's Burnaby campus tonight. Dan, how did this all happen?
Anita, SFU officials say they were not invited back to play football in an NCAA conference for next year. Now, SFU moved to the American-based NCAA in 2010, the only Canadian institution to do so. It moved partly to be able to offer more scholarships for athletes, but the team struggled with an 18-99 record, and officials say another school eventually wanted in to their 10-team conference.
Due to extensive travel, the border, competitiveness, they had made the decision not to renew our affiliate membership.
Now, the shutdown hit almost 100 students who were told this morning, and you're going to hear from some of them in just a moment. SFU says it will honor athletic scholarships, and players who want to finish their academics here can do so. Incoming recruits are being promised help as well, but current and former players say this is devastating news.
We're not done fighting. We're going to fight for our team and our program to hopefully get another year so the players do get another chance to show the world what they have in them.
It certainly wasn't us as players who decided to not play this season. It certainly wasn't the coaches who decided to play this season. It came from higher ups.
Yeah, Dan, you mentioned former players as well. So what are they saying tonight? I know they're upset.
Indeed, the BC Lions tweeting out that they are extremely disappointed, noting that SFU has produced such CFL stars as Louis Pasaglia, Rick Clausen, Nick Hebler, Glenn Jackson, Sean Millington, and Angus Reid, just to name a few. CFL Commissioner Randy Ambrosi also expressed his disappointment today. Now, Teresa Hansen says it's unlikely the program can be saved without some serious changes. She says they have asked Youth Sports, their former Canadian conference, if they can rejoin. She is not optimistic, but some former players say not so fast to the shutdown. Members of the SFU Football Alumni Society are meeting tonight at 8 p.m. They tell me they are considering their legal options to try to save the program. They say they're not prepared to walk away from the team and its 53-year history just yet. And joining us now are some current players. We're joined by several of them now. Keyshawn Dorsey, Ethan Sutton, and Alexander Gagnon in the front. Keyshawn, I'd like to start with you. What does this program mean to you?
Yeah, I would not only like to speak for myself, but as well as my teammates that are here behind me and my teammates back at home. We're just so blessed to have been given the opportunity to play for this university. You know, we came here to play at this level, play in the States. And just to be given that opportunity, we're so grateful. And you know, it's devastating to hear that such a rich history football program is being shut down, but ultimately we're just grateful to have been given the opportunity.
And you play quarterback. Ethan Sutton, you're a running back. What is this program? What's the experience been like for you?
The experience here has been, for me, it's been fairly good. I'm from Toronto, so like it's been a journey coming from Toronto to here by myself. But it's grown me into the young man I am today. And yeah, it's just a devastating time for us, but thankful for the opportunity and thankful for everything the coaches and the school has done for us.
And Alexander Gagnon, you're a middle linebacker. What does this mean for your future now?
Well, a lot of our teammates here are home BC residents, so a lot of us have to live at home to come to this university, and to pursue other career options elsewhere would either be out of province or just too far away to live at home. So that takes a big cut out of our expenses for going to university. So that adds a lot of stress onto us.
We appreciate you joining us on what's been an unimaginably difficult day for you. Thank you for taking the time with us. We appreciate it and sharing your perspective. All the best to you. Anita.
Dan Burrett live tonight at SFU's Terry Fox Field, where the SFU football program has been canceled. Thanks, Dan. Well, it's also a change for minor league baseball in BC tonight. The Vancouver Canadians have been sold to Diamond Baseball Holdings. Former owners Jake Kerr and Jeff Mooney will continue working with the team, which will stay in Vancouver and continue serving as a minor league affiliate of the Toronto Blue Jays. The sale was carried out to support the team's growth and elevate the fan-player experience, and the company is from the U.S. A long stretch of the Trans-Canada Highway in southeastern BC is set to close for 5 days. The more than 100-kilometer section of the highway between Golden and Castle Junction in Alberta will close next Tuesday, giving contractors time to work on the Kicking Horse Canyon project, widening a 2-lane highway to 4 and improving safety conditions. The Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure says the area will be open twice a day, allowing for local traffic with prearranged permits, as well as school buses and emergency vehicles. Detours will be available via Highway 93S and 95. But give yourself extra time, as those detours could add up to an extra hour and a half of travel time. Late last year, temperatures in Terrace plunged to -22. One night just before Christmas, an Indigenous man froze to death inside his tent. He was only a few kilometers away from his Tsimshian reserve, Kitsumkelam. His death is highlighting a pressing issue. Homeless people, many of them Indigenous, are looking for shelter in rural towns and cities. And as Wamish Hamilton shows us, it's leading to growing tensions.
Hi, George.
Hi, Diana.
Welcome. Welcome to our territory, the unceded territory of the Tsimshian people.
Cheers.
Thank you. Welcome to our home. We called him Dickie. Dickie was his synonymous name. Everybody knew him as. Not only because of his loud, infectious laugh, but his voice alone. Right. You can always hear him before you see him. Everybody said that. He always liked to protect people. He always protected me. I don't know what I'm going to do without my brother.
Terrace is a small city in northwest BC, home to about 12,000 people. This is where Dickie Nelson lived, in a tent. It's also where he died, on December 22nd, in -20-degree temperatures. He was 54. Dickie's family was surprised he'd returned here that night. The shelter says a bed was available. The Kassan Society, which runs the shelter, was reluctant to talk to us or let us speak to people staying there. We can't ever know why Dickie stayed outside, but he died while others argued about helping people like him, how to turn around years of neglect.
Let's get down to the approximately over 372 signatures that are asking the shelter not to go through.
Even before Dickie died in the cold, Kassan had been the focus of heated debate and the target of this petition, started by residents against the location of a new shelter.
I'll tell you, I'm going to protect myself and my property at all costs. These guys come into my yard and try and rip me off and steal stuff off of me so they can go buy drugs and alcohol. That's not going to fly. That's not going to fly in our tight little neighborhood there.
After the meeting and the tension it exposed, Kassan hired a spokesperson who would only agree to a telephone interview.
The demand for shelter services and all the associated support services has been increasing consistently for years now. That being said, not everyone who is experiencing homelessness chooses to use the shelter spaces. So we don't actually have a hard number for the amount of beds that we need.
Not everybody in the community shares the same sentiment about the shelter. How are you navigating that type of tension?
Well, I mean, the tension exists.
Kassan says the new shelter is needed more than ever. It's 5 times larger and replaces their old one, but it doesn't offer drug treatment or recovery support, services some have called for.
I believe everyone deserves help and the care they need, but this type of shelter only provides a bed and food for the night. It doesn't deal with the addiction, the pain that's caused the addiction in the first place.
Homelessness is a concern across the north. Latest rates show a 12% rise, with Indigenous people being hit hardest. Paul Lagasse in Prince Rupert sees it firsthand.
It would be nice to say, hey, yeah, let's put the shelter up and we'll solve the problem. But then, we find ourselves having to build another shelter.
The causes of homelessness today are many: rising rents, boom and bust employment cycles, intergenerational trauma, a toxic drug crisis, the pandemic.
I will say the BC government has been very, very good in investing for our most vulnerable here in the north and Terrace. But again, the expansion of homelessness has, the pool has broadened.
Terrace Mayor Sean Bouita says his city is confronting these issues, but he wants the province to do more, especially for mental health and addiction support.
And without that kind of treatment, how can we support these folks? Terrace has got one of the largest per capita First Nation population, so which in turn means that we have one of the largest per capita trauma for residential school. And it feels to me that the supports just are not there for people. And I think the way for us to move the dial is to get the Nishka, the Shimshin, the Kitsilif and Kitsum Kalim, the Teltan, the Haisla, the Haida, and the municipalities in the area, and then all go to the province and say, this issue needs to be resolved, and it needs to be resolved in the Northwest now.
The Northern First Nations Alliance is tackling this.
All of our communities are pulling together to say, look, we all share the same issues.
Arthur Renwick, who is Haisla, speaks of their joint effort. He says these issues are a terrible legacy of residential schools, among other colonial projects.
The impact has been huge, and this is the result of it. And healing is really important, and that's the main thing. The main focus is for us is like, how can we heal ourselves?
Some debate the best way to help. Others build walls. Meanwhile, vulnerable people like Dickie continue to live on the margins and die alone outside.
My brother's buried in here between my father and my mother, our mother. My brother's really lucky to be with my parents. He was cold. They said, let's go home. So they took him home.
Wamish Hamilton, CBC News, Terrace.
Johanna Wagstaff is away tonight. Amy Bel is in to bring us some bad news, I think.
Let's start with the good news first.
Okay.
was a gorgeous day. We did have some instability, as we did see a few showers, but then it brightened up and we've been left with a lovely sunny afternoon. And it will get sunnier by tomorrow morning as well. But yes, we do have some wet weather heading our way. It looks like Easter weekend, unfortunately, will be a bit of a washout. So have those Easter egg hunts inside. But right now, we're still looking at 10 degrees in Abbotsford, 9 Vancouver Airport, 10 over in Vancouver Island in Nanaimo. So getting a glimmer of those warmer temperatures. Overnight, though, it is going to be very chilly. We'll stay clear enough. We're not going to see much in the way of cloud insulation. So dropping down to 0. Could even see some frost early tomorrow morning. And then it will brighten up for the first half of the day. We will see increasing cloud throughout the day. And then, yes, we head into the rain. So that will arrive sort of tomorrow night. Tomorrow we get up to a high of about 8 degrees. Thursday, continuing with that heavy rain. Friday, especially heavy. But Friday, we will have a high around 12 degrees. And in fact, we'll keep those milder temperatures heading right through Easter weekend. But yes, unfortunately, we're going to keep with the wet weather as well, at least until Sunday.
Okay, we'll talk to you for the long range in a little bit.
Okay.
Well, today's reopening of Zellers stores across BC. They're part of 25 locations coming back more than a decade after the discount retailer closed all its stores across Canada.
Because we're curious, we used to shop at Zellers.
When I grew up with the Zellers, it was the closest department store to where I grew up.
It's open today, that's why I want to look around.
It's a good thing, it's a good.
I didn't come for Zellers, I came for something else, but just, I don't know, what is Zellers?
Zellers has now opened 4 stores in BC today, in Abbotsford, Kamloops, Surrey, and downtown Vancouver. It's been a decade since the discount chain vanished from the country's retail landscape. Instead of launching new standalone stores, the chain is building Zellers locations inside Hudson's Bay stores. Higher flight prices, not enough staff, travel rates are still down compared to pre-pandemic. We'll talk why after the break. Thanks for watching our commercial-free live stream tonight. Provinces like Ontario are touting for-profit clinics as a solution to long wait times for surgeries, but some patients say they feel taken advantage of, talked into paying for unnecessary tests and procedures, and in some cases billed for services they're not supposed to pay for. Christine Birak brings us the story of one woman who was upsold by thousands of dollars.
But in the beginning, they were $300 a prescription.
Lois Cooper says a private for-profit surgery clinic in Ontario cost her plenty, including her trust.
I wouldn't have ever spoken out if I hadn't heard Premier Ford say that these private clinics won't charge you money, won't charge extra. It feels like it's my public duty to say that's not true.
In 2016, Cooper had a macular hole in her right eye, causing a dark spot at the center of her vision. Within weeks, she saw an ophthalmologist. Cooper says she had vitrectomy surgery in a warehouse-like clinic and went home with bills.
I'd been sent there by my medical professionals. So that would mean to me that this is where you should be and this is how it's done.
Cooper's vitrectomy surgery was medically necessary, which the province pays for. But before that surgery happened, she was upsold and asked to sign off on optional tests, services, and procedures. She says the surgeon later recommended equipment, referrals, and a treatment for eye floaters that failed. Then Cooper says he told her there was a mass in her other eye requiring more surgery. That's when she started asking questions.
Where is it in the eye? What layer is it in? Where is it? And he just looked at me and he said, "You can leave." And then he turned to his assistant and he said to her, he said, "Charge this appointment to OHIP." So I didn't have to pay for that appointment, but I had to pay for all the rest.
Cooper says she then went to another surgeon who told her there was no mass in her eye.
You don't have 10 years of medical training under your belt. So you're at a huge disadvantage when you're presented with information.
Data shows private for-profit clinics are overbilling and upselling Canadians for hundreds of millions of dollars.
We need to be concerned about upselling because it's the thin edge of the wedge towards extra billing, where patients are told they can only get something that's publicly covered if they pay out of pocket.
I just want people to be aware that when they go to a private clinic, make sure you ask questions, don't sign any papers, go there first and get all the information on what they're going to want from you, and then maybe go talk to somebody else.
Cooper says her vision is fine now. She can't figure out what purpose another surgery would have served, except profit. With warmer weather and the Easter break just around the corner, booking a holiday may be on your mind, or perhaps you've already done it. But numbers show Canadians are not acting on that impulse as much as they were pre-pandemic. Stats Canada says in 2022, spending on tourism grew, but is still lower than pre-pandemic numbers. Now, tourism spending jumped 45% last year to almost $75 billion, and spending on air travel tripled as both domestic and international travel increased. But that spending for the full year was still more than a fifth below 2019 levels. To explain why this is still happening, travel consultant Mackenzie McMillan joins me now live. Mackenzie, it seems like everyone is itching to travel, everyone I talk to at least. So how are we not yet back to pre-COVID levels?
Yeah, it's a bit complicated, but basically, I think we have a lot of people that want to travel, and I think the demand is there. We just don't quite have the infrastructure still quite in place for traveling. So we're seeing airlines are flying with full planes, but there aren't as many planes in the air as there were in 2019.
And is that why we're seeing such high price increases? Obviously, that factors into people's decisions as well.
Absolutely, yeah, and we are seeing that the high pricing. We noticed it quite a bit during spring break that the high pricing was cost prohibitive, especially for families that wanted to take that vacation. So definitely, some people are maybe second guessing that first trip post pandemic and maybe waiting a little bit to see if the prices come down. I think as we came out of the pandemic or out of the restrictions, people had an idea that there would be lots of great deals on travel, and we just weren't seeing that because the demand was so high and the supply was so low.
How does BC fare in all of this? What are you seeing from your in-province clients and the effect this has had on them?
Yeah, so locally, especially here in the Lower Mainland, they are forecasting a pretty robust tourism season this year. This is looking to be the most cruise ships we've seen, and obviously cruise ships are a huge driver for the local tourism economy. But that hasn't quite translated yet into knowing what our numbers will be like. So with airlines, they tend to run lower profit margins, and so they tend to be a little bit more conservative with their regrowth plans. Whereas cruise ships are the opposite. They have quite high profit margins, and we're willing to take the gamble and put tons of ships in the region, but those ships aren't quite full yet. So that is one place where we are seeing some really good value for travel is on Alaska cruises this year. But we're hoping to see the numbers really jump up and get people back into coming to visit Canada and get Canadians back visiting abroad.
Yeah, I'm sure some people hesitant to travel on cruise ships after what happened at the beginning of COVID as well. What needs to happen to raise the rates of travel again, globally, but also here in BC?
Mm-hmm. Well, the main factor right now is hiring. It's staffing levels. So airlines have the aircraft, but they can't put them in the air if there's nobody to fly them. One of the things to remember is that the tourism industry was one of a number of industries that was severely affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. However, it took about an extra year for this industry to be able to start rebuilding. And so unfortunately, during that time, we lost a ton of very talented employees and talented staff members who have decided to move on to other industries. With a whole extra year of delay, many people were not able to continue on with the benefits that the government was supplying for people that were out of work during the pandemic. So it's a matter of getting people back into those positions, and that's definitely easier said than done.
Travel consultant Mackenzie McMillan joining us live tonight. He's with Travel Group. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Pleading not guilty, Trump in court today facing 34 felony charges. It was a day of drama and spectacle in New York. We've got all the details coming up.
Vancouver may be the perfect backdrop for Clinton and Yeltsin, offering a degree of political neutrality, economic prosperity, and of course, physical beauty. Those elements also make it perfect for everyone else attending the summit, the ones trying to catch a glimpse of the leaders and the ones trying to catch their attention. More from the CBC's Ian Hannamansing.
5:30 in the morning, and 10-year-old Kyle Naso is getting ready to meet two presidents. He's one of the Boy Scouts that were picked to greet Clinton and Yeltsin at the airport. And not surprisingly, his excitement has kept him from getting a good night's sleep.
Woke up about 4 times thinking it was 5 o'clock.
For most people, this is as close as they could get to the VIP visitors. About 50 people huddled in a cold rain at the summit meeting site this morning, like Devel Bowie and John Hopkins, who had hoped to catch a glimpse of Yeltsin's arrival. And that's about all they got, a quick glimpse through a limousine window.
Oh, I thought it was great. He waved and he was a really nice guy.
I got a couple pictures. Hopefully I got one of him waving.
About 2 hours later, the crowd swelled to more than 250 people for an even briefer look at the President of the United States.
Well, it's a happening, so we'd say it's worth the trip.
Since it was in Vancouver, it would be an important part to see because it's something you'll remember for the rest of your life.
$25 fine?
For some, the summit has been more annoying than historic. For instance, people who parked on the motorcade route last night discovered this morning their cars had been towed away.
Totally disrupted my whole morning. I had a doctor's appointment, and it was terrible.
No justice on stolen land! Free all American political prisoners!
For others, this weekend is no mere inconvenience. A coalition of protest groups, angry with U.S. and Russian policies, marched through the downtown, far away from the summit meeting. Meanwhile, across town at the airport, there was a much happier reception. Kyle got close, but didn't get a chance to meet either president. His reaction to this brush with greatness?
I wanted to shake his hand a lot, but I was still honored to go. It was a great experience.
Access to the leaders will remain very limited for the rest of the weekend, but their itineraries have been widely publicized. And some people plan to wait patiently along motorcade routes to try to see a president up close. Ian Hannamansing, CBC News, Vancouver.
The United States is in uncharted territory today. Donald Trump has become the first former or current U.S. president to ever be criminally charged. Trump appeared before a judge pleading not guilty to 34 charges. He's accused of falsifying business records. Katie Simpson takes us through how this unprecedented day unfolded.
USA! USA! The mood in the crowd outside the Lower Manhattan courthouse would swing wildly from Donald Trump pep rally.
I'm here to stand with President Trump.
To the doom and gloom of America's darkest day.
It's a witch hunt. It's all political.
Turnout was much smaller than most Trump events. Consider it a moment for his die-hard supporters.
I would gladly take a bullet for him.
Police barricades separating pro- and anti-Trump factions kept the peace.
We're going here to be with the people.
And well-known agitators, including Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, appeared briefly.
We cannot tolerate this injustice. President
Her bullhorn was drowned out by screams and whistles in the crowd. Trump departed for the courthouse with a fist pump, calling the moment surreal. He was whisked inside, flanked by Secret Service, who walked him through the arrest, the reading of his Miranda rights and fingerprinting. The typical mugshot and handcuffing would be skipped.
President Trump.
As the weight of the moment sank in, Trump appeared so angry in the moments before entering his not guilty plea.
on 34 felony charges in connection to the documentation of hush money payments made to keep negative stories about him a secret during the 2016 election campaign, including one to porn star Stormy Daniels, who says she had an affair with Trump, and another to former Playboy model Karen McDougal on the same accusation.
These are felony crimes in New York State, no matter who you are.
President Trump.
Trump didn't linger, slipping out a side door to his waiting motorcade, his lawyers vowing to vigorously fight these charges.
He's frustrated, he's upset, but I'll tell you what, he's motivated, and it's not going to stop him, and it's not going to slow him down, and it's exactly what he expected.
And by this evening, Trump was back home in Florida, and back in front of a podium, speaking to his supporters, offering his own take on this historic day.
And I never thought anything like this could happen in America. Never thought it could happen. The only crime that I have committed is to fearlessly defend our nation from those who seek to destroy it.
Yeah, Trump spoke for quite some time, just about an hour ago. That was Katie Simpson reporting tonight. Continuing with this story, inside this history-making moment, there's a lot of legal work. Thomas Dagla is taking us through the now unsealed indictment and the case prosecutors have built.
Nearly 30 pages of court documents lay out for the first time a criminal case against a former U.S. president. The defendant, listed as Donald J. Trump, is charged with 34 counts of falsifying business records, one count for each individual payment prosecutors allege was made to conceal criminal conduct that hid damaging information from the voting public during the 2016 presidential election.
That is exactly what this case is about. 34 false statements made to cover up other crimes.
The case centers on a scheme to report hush money as legal expenses. Prosecutors say in one instance in 2015, a doorman was paid $30,000 to stay quiet about a child Trump allegedly fathered out of wedlock. Later, porn star Stormy Daniels and former Playboy model Karen McDougal were each given six-figure sums to conceal past affairs. In an audio recording, Trump is allegedly heard asking about McDougal, "So what do we got to pay for this? $150?"
How difficult is it to approach a case like this when the defendant happens to be a former president?
Whether or not the person is a former president isn't as important as the weight of the evidence they have, the credibility of the witnesses they have. That's what's going to determine whether or not they can prove this case beyond a reasonable doubt.
One key witness, Trump's former lawyer, Michael Cohen, was already convicted of lying under oath. All of this comes as the former president faces multiple other ongoing criminal and civil probes.
He needs to think about how any concessions he may make or evidence that he offers in one case may impact those other cases. So it's going to be a challenge.
Trump's lawyers want the New York case dismissed. Prosecutors plan to go to trial next year. Thomas Dagg, CBC News, Toronto.
At 6:42 tonight, a live look at Victoria's Inner Harbor from the Swans Hotel. Another beautiful day by the water, but it's not lasting long. Amy Bel has the 5-day weather forecast coming up. to check in now with Amy Bel for the long forecast. And Amy, okay, I won't get into the bad news right away. I'll let you do that.
We don't need to sugarcoat it.
Okay.
There'll be enough sugar over the Easter weekend. It's going to be wet. We can't get around that. It is April in the Lower Mainland, so yes, chances are if it's a sunny day, the rain is coming. So that is the case, though not immediately. We will continue to see fairly dry conditions overnight, just a slight chance of some scattered showers, much as we saw today, very unsettled and just a few showers here and there. Early tomorrow morning will clear up again and we'll see sunshine to start tomorrow. And in fact, for most areas across BC tomorrow will be another lovely day. But see that? That's what's coming for us, and that packs a lot of precipitation. So we will see that rain arriving for us here overnight tomorrow, late day overnight, and then we are going to see a lot of rain, unfortunately, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and at this point, Sunday. Likely on Monday too. So yes, as we mentioned, any of those Easter picnics and Easter egg hunts will best be inside this year. But yes, we will see it falling as snow, of course, in the very northern eastern parts of the province. And then we'll just continue to sort of see these waves of precipitation heading over us. So it won't be just one solid deluge of water, but we will see those systems back to back with just a few breaks between them right through into early next week. The only benefit, though, is as we look ahead, we will see those temperatures rising up by the weekend. So tomorrow we'll get into about 10-degree territory here in Vancouver, but overnight it'll drop down to about 0. And then we will see those overnight temperatures really warming up over the next several days. Unfortunately, over on Vancouver Island, the Comox, Tofina area, you will be getting that rain a little bit earlier than the rest of us. Starting off with the sunshine a little bit stronger, and then we'll head into those clouds late in the afternoon, sort of a flip, a reverse of what we did today. Prince Rupert will be seeing rain on and off throughout the day, same with Port Hardy. Gorgeous day up in Dease Lake, high of 8. Prince George, sunshine as well, right through into Cranbrook. And then the 5-day forecast. It's a lot of rain. It's a lot of rain indeed. Take that sunshine when you can tomorrow morning. As I said, we head into the rain late in the day, and it just sticks around right through into early next week.
Okay.
That's the best I can do.
Will do. Got the umbrella handy.
There you go.
Thanks, Amy.
You're welcome.
Well, after a massive decline in BC's steelhead and salmon populations in the 1970s, the federal and provincial governments launched hatchery programs around the province to save these species from collapse. From January to April of each year, a team of volunteers from the Fraser Valley Catch the Wild steelhead trout needed to produce the next generation of hatchery fish.
I'm a fishing guide on the Fraser for sturgeon and salmon, and I'm a volunteer broodstock angler. And I've been fishing since I was about 6 years old on the Chilliwack Vetter. Sturgeon is my livelihood. Steelhead is my getaway from it all.
Morning. Good, how are you? Good. Any luck today? Steelhead is an ocean-going rainbow trout. When they are present in streams that have an open path to the estuary, fish will migrate to the open ocean before it returns back to its natal stream to spawn. I grew up in Agassiz and spent a lot of time fishing this river in particular. I have great memories of fishing this river when I was a kid with my dad. I lived and breathed fishing. In the late 70s, there was a very steep decline in populations. The Salmon Enhancement Program kicked off in 1977 to rebuild salmon and steelhead populations. Without a lot of these volunteers, this program would not be as successful as it is today, for sure. Because we pretty much rely 100% on volunteer anglers to provide the fish for the broodstock. They have a brood capture tube, so it's like a bag about this long. Well, I can show you. So it's like that. So when you catch a fish, you just kind of lay that, in the water a little bit. The zipper open, and then when you catch the fish and you get it to the shore, you just unhook it and you slip it in there and zip it up, and then you call the hatchery and they'll come and pick it up.
I'm lucky with my job as a guide that I'm able to basically have a pretty relaxed winter. So I was out here fishing all the time anyway, and I thought, you know, why not see if I can get involved and do my part, basically. There's not as many of them. Say you get a few 100,000 salmon that come back, you'll get, you know, 3,000 or so steelhead that'll come back to the vedder. So the age-old thing is they say it's fish 1,000 casts.
You're not likely to encounter high numbers of fish. You can go days without getting a bite or even seeing a fish. That one time when your float goes down and you hook onto one, it's all those days of nothing seem to fade away.
I've been fishing here since I was really young. I've made a living off the resource. The resource is a huge part of my life, so being able to give back to it is a big thing.
The target is 60 fish, a 50-50 split of male-females. With the survivals in the hatchery and everything, that typically gives us around 125,000 smolts. They're released as a 1-year-old smolt. They're now ready to make their migration to the sea. You know, we've been doing this obviously now since 1977, and the numbers back then were a lot lower. Who knows, maybe there would be no steelhead left if the province and the federal government didn't step in and introduce hatchery programs.
I want my kids, if I ever have kids one day, I want them to be able to utilize it, and their kids to be able to utilize it, come out here and catch fish, and it just feels good in that way to be able to come out and do my part and hopefully keep that going.
Coming up, what would you do with 55 million bucks? This Vancouver Island bookkeeper won big in the lottery. What's first on his list? Find out after the break.
On Walker Road, there's some pretty bad ones. It's bumpy all the time and it's just not good.
What's the worst pothole you've ever seen? What did it do to your car?
It actually happened last week and my car is still in the shop. It tore up my tire. Yeah, it was pretty bad.
So, and you get stuck with that bill? Do you feel like giving it to somebody else?
Well, I would love to give it to someone else, but I couldn't. I had to take it myself, and it wasn't a fun one to pay.
What did it cost you?
It was like $600 because I had to get a new tire. Yeah, and my rim was damaged. I was driving, I was going like the speed limit, and then I don't know what happened. I just hit the angle of the pothole at a weird spot, and it tore through my tire.
A poll happening right now for CAA, and people can submit their vote for the worst roads for potholes in Ontario and Windsor. You can vote on the worst street in Windsor. So if you got a chance to vote for the worst street, what would you put?
I would put Walker Road because of what happened to me, for sure.
I would say it's a typical year. We've had a lot of temperature swings over the last 2 months. One day we're 60, one day we're below freezing, so that doesn't help out with the pothole situation, of course. We have patch crews out every day. Hopefully with the warmer weather now, we won't have those temperature swings leading to further potholes. So we have a scouting program where we have somebody go out and scout, and using some new technology, as they drive, it just picks up where the potholes are. And those locations are distributed to the patch crews so that they can just go right to the pothole instead of looking for them themselves.
University is pretty bad. College is a road that I take daily almost, and that one's pretty bad too. I work in the East End off of Lausanne, take that Monday through Friday. So that has a lot of potholes here and there, and it's some that you have to swerve and miss, and at the same time, you're trying to make sure you're not causing an accident, so you're not hitting someone else and hurting someone else or destroying your vehicle at the same time.
I'm Amy Bel, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
On April 15th, join CBC at the Vancouver Vaisakhi Festival, a Sikh celebration of the coming of a new year. Drop by the CBC Vancouver tent, say hi, and win some fun CBC prizes. And continue the celebration and fanfare at the Sikh Festival on April 22nd at the Surrey Vaisakhi Parade. Visit us at the CBC Vancouver tent for your chance to win fun CBC prizes. More info at cbc.ca/BC.
New world records have been set for the deepest filming of a fish and the deepest catch of a fish. First, scientists filmed a snailfish more than 8,000 meters deep in the western Pacific Ocean. It was in an area between Japan and the Mariana Trench. And a few days after the initial discovery, they set another record, this time in the Japan Trench when they captured 2 snailfish. This is the first time a fish was ever caught in waters lower than 8,000 meters. Very, very cool. And another thing that's really cool, for one guy, a Vancouver Island bookkeeper says he's done crunching numbers at the office after becoming a multimillionaire.
Ooh, I knew that was coming. I knew it was coming.
William Scott Gurney won $55 million during the Lotto Max draw on February 28th. The Sydney resident says news of the winning ticket was all over the radio, so he checked his Lotto app, and that's when his life changed. Gurney plans to buy a new waterfront home on Vancouver Island with his winnings.
I got my annual trip kind of planned already, so I'm going to take a month and kind of go someplace, and that's what I'll think about it.
Excellent.
Until I get to that point, probably not a lot. Just going to sit on it. Just sitting, probably not the best place, but I'll just sit in a high interest rate bank account until I decide where and how I want to put it.
Before he completely retires, Gurney is focused on finding someone to look after his clients. If only. I mean, you're definitely set for life, a new home, some investment, and a whole lot of new best friends, I'm sure. That brings us to the end of our show tonight. We leave you with some pictures of some orcas up in Indian Arms, spotted around noon this afternoon, putting on a show.